All right, let's jump right into a really fascinating question where ancient faith meets cutting-edge tech. The big one is this. Can a machine, an algorithm, really make sure that our finances stick to sacred Islamic principles? Is it possible for AI to be the new guardian of Sharia compliance? It's a huge idea, so let's unpack it.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll tackle the sheer scale of the problem. Then, we'll dive into this pretty cool 3-layer AI solution that's being developed. After that, we'll look at how it actually reads data in contracts. Then, and this is super important, we'll talk about making the AI accountable. And finally, we'll look at what all this means for the future of compliance.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the scaling problem. And really, it's all about the challenge of keeping things legit when you're growing at a massive scale. See, the world of Islamic finance, it's just exploding, and that incredible growth is creating a huge bottleneck for compliance. So how big are we talking? $4 trillion. That's the estimated value of all Islamic finance assets out there right now. And think about this. Every single dollar, every transaction, every contract inside that $4 trillion needs constant, and I mean constant, monitoring to make sure it's Sharia compliant.
So what does that actually look like on the ground? Well, traditionally, this is all on the shoulders of highly trained Sharia scholars. These are the experts who manually go through every product, every contract, every financial statement. It's incredibly meticulous work, right? But when you're talking about millions of transactions, it's a job that just doesn't scale. There's no way a human can keep up.
And this really puts the problem into perspective. A human scholar doing their due diligence could take 3 full days to comb through a complex contract to find just one non-compliant clause. In AI, it can flag that same issue in 3 seconds. 3 days versus 3 seconds. That's not just an improvement, it's a total game changer. It's the difference between something that's supposed to be compliant and something that actually is in real time.
Okay, so that brings us to our second section, how on earth do you solve a problem that big? Well, the answer that's coming out of the research is a really sophisticated, multi-layered AI system.
You can think of it as a 3-part system, with each layer doing a specific job. The first layer is all about sifting through tons of transaction data. The second layer tackles the really tricky legal language in contracts. And the third layer, which is maybe the most important, makes sure the whole thing is transparent and makes sense to the human experts in charge.
All right, Section 3. Let's really get into the weeds here and look at those first 2 technical layers. How does this AI actually read and understand all this information?
So the first layer uses something called an isolation forest. The best way to think about it is like a super smart security system for data. It starts by looking at millions of normal compliant transactions to learn the rhythm of what's okay. Once it knows what normal looks like, it watches everything else in real time. So a weird payment that kind of looks like interest or a massive transfer happening at 2 a.m., boom, it isolates it instantly and sends up a red flag for a human to check out.
And you can see why this is so powerful, right? The system can automatically greenlight, say, 80% of all transactions because they fit the normal pattern. That's a huge deal. It means the human experts, the scholars, can stop wasting time on the routine stuff and focus all their energy on that 20% of cases that are actually tricky and need a real expert eye.
Okay, now for layer 2. This is where things get really mind-blowing. It uses a super powerful language model you might have heard of called BERT, and its job is to read and actually understand financial contracts. I'm not just talking about a keyword search, like hitting Control F. No, this thing understands context, nuance, and meaning, almost like a human scholar would.
And this quote really nails why that's so important. Think about the word return. If you see profit-sharing return, that's totally fine, that's halal. But if you see fixed guaranteed return, well, that's interest, that's riba. A simple keyword search can't tell the difference between the two, but BERT can. It sees the context and knows one is okay and the other is a huge red flag. That's the level of deep understanding we're talking about here.
So, the AI can spot potential problems in data and contracts. That's great, but it's not enough, is it? For any of this to work, people have to trust it, and that brings us to Section 4, and honestly, the most critical piece of the puzzle, making the AI accountable. You can't just have a black box AI that spits out a yes or no answer. That's totally useless here. The Sharia boards, the human experts, need to know why the AI flagged something. So this third layer is all about explainable AI. It gives a complete audit trail, explaining exactly what it found and why it thinks it's a problem. This is all about upholding the principle of amana, or trust, and making sure that at the end of the day, a human being is still making the final call.
And what's really important to see here is that this is growing beyond just a tech solution. There's a whole ethical framework being built around it, called AI Taqwa compliance. It's basically a rulebook for building these systems right, making sure they're transparent, they protect people's privacy, and crucially, that they're trained on data that's actually based on Islamic finance, not conventional interest-based models.
So, for our last section, let's bring this back to the real world. How is this tech already showing up in our lives, and what does it mean for the future of the human scholars at the heart of all this?
Believe it or not, this stuff isn't some far-off future tech. It's already here, right in your pocket. It's the engine behind popular investing apps like Zoya, Masafa, and Finispia. They use these exact kinds of AI techniques to screen literally hundreds of thousands of stocks in real time. It's what makes halal investing possible and accessible for pretty much anyone with a phone.
Now, it's not a perfectly smooth road ahead. There are some big challenges to overcome. First, you need a ton of good, clean training data, and that's hard to come by. You also have to somehow translate the incredibly deep nuances of Islamic law, of fiqh, into code. And maybe most importantly, you need tech people and religious scholars to work together side by side.
But here's the key takeaway, the big vision for the future. The goal here is not AI replaces scholars. Absolutely not. The real idea is that AI gives scholars superpowers. Think about it. The AI does the grunt work, the high-volume routine stuff, and that frees up the scholars to do what only humans can do, tackle the really complex ethical questions, develop new financial ideas, and provide that essential human wisdom and oversight.
And that brings us right back to where we started, to you. As this tech gets woven deeper and deeper into our financial lives, the question becomes personal. So what do you think? Would you trust an AI to monitor your halal investments? To be a guardian of your financial faith? It's a question we're all going to have to answer, and probably sooner than we think.